Thanks for choosing to listen to this Late Night Linux Family podcast. We're only able to do this because of the people who support us. None of our shows are paywalled, but our Patreon supporters can get most episodes early and never hear any ads. Learn more at latenightlinux.com/support or support us by telling a friend or colleague about everything we do.
Hybrid Cloud Show, episode 56. I'm Aaron.
I'm Gary.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Shane.
Welcome to the show about public cloud, private cloud, and everything in between. Our views here are ours and not those of our employers. So it's been a little while since we checked in on how everybody's home labs are doing, and I believe, Sean, that you've got an update that you can kick us out the door with.
I am getting rid of my servers. But not all of them, just most of them.
Going full cloud, are we?
No, I think we can all agree, I have a bit of an overkill of a setup with my 3 rack servers, and they're loud, and energy isn't expensive as it is in other places, but I think maybe it's time to be surprised about how much a VM can really do for you and how many VMs you really need.
You're going for a Wisebox?
No, I'll probably just keep one of them and probably consolidate the other 2 because, just one of the machines has 52 cores and 128 gigabytes of RAM.
Oh my God.
I think keeping one of them is probably enough.
It's still overkill. I ran for years on one Dell Wisebox with just a giant Docker compose describing about 50 different apps running on it. It's fine. You're fine. All good.
I think if I had the option to buy hardware that wasn't ridiculously, double the price, all my parts, then yeah, I'd probably build a competent machine that I would just use as my single host. But since I already have this, I think I can just take my existing clusters and stuff, just migrate all the VMs over. Storage I'll have to figure out, but eventually I'll pop those disks out and then I'll probably just sell the other 2 machines and just have one rack server.
Yeah, it's definitely a season for using what you've got versus buying something new, isn't it? With the price of storage and RAM nowadays.
Okay, so take us on this journey with you. You've got 3 machines at the moment. This is a K3S cluster, isn't it?
So it's actually a Proxmox cluster. And then on the Proxmox cluster, I have 3 different Kubernetes clusters running. And 2 of them are just for test. So I just test things like when I was going from Nginx to Envoy. That was an easy place to test. But my main production cluster is 3 master, 3 workers with some beefy requirements. And when I looked at my Grafana and I realized what I was actually using it for and how much utilization it was, I realized that Grafana and Prometheus were taking up most of my utilization, and I really don't need that much.
Okay, so for your new architecture, it's going to be 1 physical host.
Yeah, I'll have the 1 physical host because, I bought them when it was a time when I was learning Kubernetes, and I was learning how to do high availability on things like Proxmox, and I've learned it. It's time to move on to the next thing. Don't ask what the next thing is.
So are you going to be running Kubernetes at all, or are you just going to be running the containers on the Metal?
No, I'm probably going to keep Proxmox, and then I'll just run the Kubernetes clusters on that 1 host. I don't need the physical redundancy, but I still do need the high availability and the high uptime that Kubernetes gives me.
How are you going to get high availability on a single host?
Well, it's Proxmox, so I'll have multiple VMs on there, part of the Kubernetes cluster, and then whenever I need to do something, right, and I do like an upgrade on one of my hosts, then I'll tear down one of the VMs, right? Stand up a new one, add to the cluster, next one, until I'm done. But you're right, I won't have physical redundancy anymore.
Your failure scenario here becomes more a VM crashes, or you want to pull one up for updates or something, rather than an entire physical box being able to be taken offline.
You got it. I've had these things for, I think, 5-6 years now, and not one of them has died. So I think I'm jinxing it. I need to knock on some wood right now. But yeah, that's my new failure pattern. I can live with it.
Remind me what you're running on these things?
I have a couple VMs. I have a couple bootable container images for things like Pi-hole and Nginx that act as like a load balancer. I have a Home Assistant VM. I have a VM for like Hermes agent when I was exploring that, or, whatever need comes up, I usually create one. But then my main host that I actually use, I have 6 VMs, 3 workers, 3 master nodes for Kubernetes. And then I have 2 clusters of just 1 worker, 1 master node for my test clusters. So all in all, it's about 15 VMs?
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of whether starting fresh, it would make sense for you to be using Kubernetes at all, or whether this really is a situation where the updates on the underlying VM are significant enough for your uptime that it makes sense to have the added complexity of Kubernetes.
Good question. I still want to keep Kubernetes around. There's still things that like I do at work that are Kubernetes based. So exploring and messing with it in a home lab environment is still something I want versus just doing some giant Docker Compose or Quadlet setup.
Okay.
Well, so unlike Sean, I've been introducing some high availability into my home lab through moving to a Proxmox cluster. And this was really ushered in by a memory failure that I had on my primary hypervisor.
How did you find out about that?
So I found out about this just before I was about to go away for a work trip earlier in the year, which was also just before I was about to move house, which was fun, where my primary hypervisor just locked up and all of my services went offline, which was not fun. So I hard powered off the primary hypervisor, brought it back online. It seemed to come back online fine. So I ran a memory test, which passed absolutely fine. So at this point, I figured that I probably had a bad motherboard or something.
I'm thinking it's DNS, right? It's got to be DNS.
When in doubt, it's DNS.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely DNS that was causing the Proxmox node to hard lock up. So anyway, I'd been thinking about investigating HA for a while because there was a bunch of stuff that went offline that was annoying while I was out of the country. So I actually did set up a Proxmox cluster with the primary node being my Chinese N150 motherboard and the secondary and tertiary node both being our favorite Wise 5070s, because I have a stack of Wise 5070s that sits right next to the stack of laptops.
Just a quick one on Proxmox clusters. Is that basically distributing VMs across multiple hardware hosts? And how does that distribute them?
Yeah, exactly. So I've always kept my VMs on shared storage anyway. So my hypervisors have always had very minimal storage for boot inside of them. And all of the VMs were then on shared storage across NFS. So for me, this was effectively just adding compute nodes with access to the underlying storage and then setting the HA stuff up in Proxmox. So adding the two other nodes to the cluster, setting the VMs that I wanted to have HA on in HA mode, and then setting priorities and things for those.
And since you've done that, have you been saved by that HA configuration yet?
I have both been saved and burned by that HA configuration. So, as it turns out, I had been extremely lazy when I provisioned some of these VMs and had left the ISO for the install mounted in the VM and left the optical drive device connected to the VM. What that had in turn done is meant that I had a hard dependency on the VMs that were in HA mode, depending on a resource that was on the single primary hypervisor. So my hypervisor locked up again, and all of the HA failed, however, failed in such a way that the VMs had half failed over to the other hosts because they could see their storage disks, and then had failed to boot because they couldn't see the ISO file that was in the virtual disk drive because that was on local storage on the node that was offline. So I was burned there, in as much as I then had to get the other host to come back online so that I could move the VMs back. Some of those VMs were in a locked state in Proxmox, so I had to learn very much how QM unlock and some of those various admin commands worked, so I could move the VMs back to the primary host to then remove the optical drive from them so that they could then boot back up.
So you said that you had these VMs in HA mode. Is that something that you just turn on Proxmox?
Yeah, so once you've got a cluster, you have two options for running VMs. There is running a VM which doesn't have HA, which means that it just sits statically on a single host and doesn't move around when hardware fails or when a hypervisor goes offline. And then you've got VMs in HA mode, which do that. So if I were to reboot my secondary hypervisor, my Windows 11 VM that I remote into for some work stuff would move to the primary one or the tertiary one or whatever. Now, the reason that I don't have some VMs in HA mode is they are things which have HA within themselves. So, for example, I have a Tailscale exit node, and a subnet router sat locally on each of the hypervisors, and they're kind of providing redundancy between themselves anyway. So I don't want them to necessarily move around, but they're also services that I want high availability on.
So behind the scenes, do you know what sort of thing the Proxmox cluster is doing with those VMs to keep them HA? Is it keeping them in sync and things and doing anything clever, or is it more naive than that?
It's not doing anything clever in terms of storage, so I haven't bothered setting up Ceph or anything because all of my VMs were already on NFS storage. So I've got the Synology NAS with the 10 gig link into the network. So all of the VMs have always sat on SSDs in that NAS anyway. So it's not doing anything clever in terms of sync for the QCOW files. What it does do is when you migrate a VM between hosts, it will sync the current contents of the RAM for the VM so that you can do a live migration.
So does it do that all the time in the background so that if you've got a failure, you've got the latest state, or do you have to do it manually?
No, it only does that if you try and gracefully move a VM. If I were to go and pull the power cable out of one of the hypervisors now, then I'd lose the system state and it would just think it had hard rebooted.
Right.
As long as stuff is flushed to disk, then it's generally not so much of an issue, right? But the usual caveats of hard rebooting a machine would apply in that case.
All right. So Gary, you've added high availability at the Proxmox layer, and Sean, you have now removed your high availability, so you're down to one host. You're still going to be running Kubernetes, though. You're going to be doing that again with, was it K3s on top of the VMs that you've got sitting there?
Yeah, they're bootable containers, they're images. As they update and the new versions come out, they just atomically swap. I don't see a need to change that. It's almost like Talos, but homegrown.
Yeah, whereas I'm going to continue to have my janky several application servers running standalone Docker containers and the high availability we handled at the VM level. So it's two different approaches to solve quite a similar problem, I would guess.
Gary, for your applications, are you dividing the applications into single VMs and then just running a single Docker container? Or have you got how are you logically breaking up these things?
So I have a compose stack per application, and then those are logically split out into groupings of applications, which should live together in my head on VMs. So there is a couple of VMs that are running public-facing things. There are a couple of VMs running things that are not mine in Docker compose stacks. They get onto a different network. It's just very crudely split out subsets of applications in Docker compose stacks, but it's not one VM per application by any means.
How do you do monitoring then? Because I imagine if you had something like, I'm just going to say, Prometheus, right? Then you'd have to have an exporter on every single host or every single VM you want metrics on. How do you set that up?
Yes, you're right. I would have to do that, but I'm actually using NetData for that. So I pay for their HomeLab cloud subscription. I install the agent on all the VMs and I do the monitoring through there. So they're all constantly pumping up the metrics to NetData's cloud service. And
awesome.
That gives me a single pane of glass into everything.
Good. That saves me having to remember how you say who watches the watchers in Latin.
No, I think it's better to run your own monitoring stack that just eats up all your memory, but then tells you that something's eating all your memory.
That's exactly how Prometheus acts.
Yeah.
I did, in the process of this, discover a new project that I've been trialing called Pulse, which is an open source project, and it is effectively just a single pane of glass into your Proxmox HA clusters, Docker containers, and Proxmox backup server nodes. So that is hosted locally, but that gives me a place to log in and say, are all of my Docker containers healthy? Are all of my backups happening? How much storage have I got left on each node? How many days worth of retention have I got on my offsite Proxmox backup server and that kind of thing? So that was something new that I put in as part of this, which has been quite a nice project to have a look at.
That's cool. Sean, did you say that you've got your Grafana stack sitting on your hosts?
Yeah, actually, I have the LGTM, whatever stack. So I have Loki, Grafana, Tempo, and Prometheus instead of Amir. But all of those running in Kubernetes using the kubeprometheus stack, and then the various charts, and then I have the Alloy agent on all the hosts exporting to that. And then what I've done is internally for my DNS, I've set up some records, so that way when I have other VMs like Home Assistant or one of my other test clusters, they always forward their metrics and logs and stuff to the Kubernetes cluster where I have a single, highly available instance. And what's been really nice is that I can write a quadlet for this one time, and then I can just insert it on any stage I want for my bootable container. So then I can always build off of my baseline that already has metrics and log forwarding already configured with all my secrets and everything. And that's been really nice and really scalable.
And then do you have a dead man switch or something on that stack so that you know if that server's died?
Yes, on my backup server, which is connected to my home through WireGuard, they have a stack for Uptime Kuma and stuff that will monitor that constantly. So that way, if any of my hosts or the watcher, goes down, then I have a watcher offsite that's watching that. So some sort of, security.
So that's Sean and Gary. Shane, what have you been up to in your home lab?
Well, hardware-wise, it remains as janky as usual. I haven't done anything too wild in terms of the underlying infrastructure or how it's running. One of my aims for the home lab is to open source how I'm setting everything up. Everything's in GitOps, should be easy to open source. For some reason, I'm still terrified of that. I have obviously sealed secrets in that repo as well, so I haven't gotten to the stage where I'm willing to open source the project. In lieu of that, what I've got now is a homepage on my website where you can actually just see what I'm running and how I deploy everything. So it's kind of got a running inventory, what's deployed, how it's structured. It's mostly for my own reference because I forget how everything's set up, but it's probably worth a look if anyone's actually interested in seeing the full picture of what I'm running.
And how have you made that?
With writing words. I don't know how to answer that question.
Here was me thinking you'd built yourself some cool new project which scraped it and wrote it up for you, but no, you're just writing it yourself.
I could do that. No. What I was doing before is writing blog posts with why have I made this decision, et cetera, et cetera. It was just way too much effort. So I figured just keeping a running tally and keeping that public will keep me honest, basically. The other thing I've been trying to do as well is get Home Assistant running on Kubernetes, which has been more challenging than I expected.
Why is that? What's gone wrong?
Well, there's a couple of reasons why it's tricky. Home Assistant and Kubernetes don't really mix super well. The first challenge is Bluetooth. So Bluetooth's a hardware interface. It's got to be a specific physical address. And so Home Assistant needs to be attached to a physical machine, effectively. Kubernetes obviously doesn't want to do that because it wants to schedule stuff everywhere. So the first thing you have to do is pin the pod to a specific node that has a Bluetooth adapter. One of my dodgy laptops in this case.
So if you're pinning this container to the specific laptop anyway, what value are you getting out of the Kubernetes?
None.
The cool factor, guys.
More complexity.
Well, I don't know. Are you getting more complexity, or are you getting a standardized way that you deploy all of your applications that Kubernetes fits into? So you can still use whatever stack it is you're using to deploy this particular application.
That's too sensible, Gary.
But you lose the HA that you get with the other ones, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely doing the exact same app setup as everything else. So that's all duplicated and pretty simplified. It does add further complexity, though, because you kind of have to run Home Assistant in a weird way for you to really get the benefits of it.
Okay, so talk us through this Bluetooth story then.
Other than pinning it to a particular node, you also have to give it a privileged security context, which doesn't feel great. It's basically so the container can talk to BlueZ, the Linux Bluetooth stack, because if you don't, then the kernel basically will block that access. The other thing you need to do is get dbus socket pass-through working, the /run dbus directory.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so you got to get that done to do the inter-process comms that BlueZ will use to expose the Bluetooth devices. So that is what I had to do to get Home Assistant even recognizing Bluetooth adapters. But once I did have that working, it did work.
And what was the Bluetooth thing you wanted?
Oh, so I've got a couple of Govee, maybe they're called, devices. They basically give you humidity and temperature in various rooms in my house. Basically, I've got a couple of these devices. One's in the attic because my attic gets super damp and I'm always worried that it's going to leak into my ceiling. So I have some monitors for doing that. And so I manage all that through Home Assistant. It's got a nice integration as well. The other issue with Home Assistant was networking, because Home Assistant needs to be able to kind of understand and see your host network in your home, basically.
Wait, what do you mean? I don't understand. Why is that a problem? Shouldn't whatever host it's running on be able to see the rest of the network?
So Kubernetes by default will give each pod its own isolated network namespace. Home Assistant needs to be able to see the host network directly. So like needs to see MDMS for like device discovery and for basically like relying on a bunch of things where you need to be on the same local network as your actual devices. That's Home Assistant's MO really. And so this one was actually reasonably easy to fix. It was just setting the host network up. But once I did that, it no longer needed a load balancer because, as we said, high availability was completely redundant. So everything in the pod was just reachable by an IP. So simplified the setup a bit, but also added a lot of complexity.
Okay, so the end result of this, you've got a Bluetooth attached Home Assistant in a container that doesn't go anywhere. Aside from the humidity in your attic, what else are you using Home Assistant for?
I think Graham might have mentioned this on a previous late night Linux show, but I can't remember the name of it. It's a terrible name, but it's basically Home Assistant's voice assistant device. So it's like a physical device called Nabu. I've only really started with it. You have to pay for a subscription to get like voices effectively to speak, but effectively I've got it where I can tell it, give me the weather or turn off the TV downstairs because my kids really need to go to bed, things like that. It's quite good at.
Home Assistant's fantastic. And it's like the little things that you really didn't expect. Like I hooked it up to my calendar and then a Google Maps API. And this is a native integration. I didn't have to do anything crazy for this. And now it'll tell me if there's a location attached to an event, it'll tell me like, hey, you have to leave by this time to make it to your destination on time. And like that little stuff is just amazing because that's way simpler than trying to program some LLM service to do it.
And how does it tell you that?
So in Home Assistant, you have concept of users and you can attach like a device saying like this device's physical location is representative of where this user is at. So I just attach it to my phone. And that represents where I'm at. And then I say origin is this user, so me. And then destination is wherever the event location is. And then it submits that, gets a request back for how much time it's going to take, and sends that to me on a nice little notification that Home Assistant has native support for.
Right, in an app or something.
In the app, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite cool. Like if you install Home Assistant, the app, your phone becomes like almost another sensor in your house that presents lots of interesting data, like battery for whatever reason, or again, location and things like that. And then you can kind of do lots of interesting personal automations that are obviously self-hosted and not privy to data theft.
Right, so presumably you could do things like turn all the lights on when you get to the front door if you were so inclined.
Yep. It can tell you even the Wi-Fi strength, so it can even know when I get to a certain point, then turn it on. It's really good.
Okay, and so aside from your Home Assistant, and are you running Image as well, or just?
Oh yeah, I checked this on the website, but yes, I am running. Image is the most useful thing I'm using. Like that is just incredibly good piece of software. So yeah, all over that.
So aside from the good pieces of software, what other janky things have you got on your janky hardware?
So the jankiest thing is definitely Tube Archivist. It's sort of like self-hosted YouTube.
Okay, and so presumably this is what you're using to download all of the episodes of the podcast that we have on YouTube.
100%. I don't trust Google's redundancy. I feel like we need our own backup of our podcast. Just to be clear, Tube Archivist basically lets you subscribe to YouTube channels and download stuff.
I only just got that you were saying Tube Archivist. I thought that it was some kind of, twist on Chewbacca from Star Wars, but now I'm following.
Oh my gosh.
Chewbacca-ist. Actually, that's better.
Usually I'm the one with accent problems.
I mean, my life is accent problems, Sean.
Oh no.
The challenge is that basically YouTube, for some weird reason, don't want you downloading all these videos with a nice web UI and no ads and no algorithm. Working offline, right?
Shocking.
Yeah, shocker, right? They want to make money off me for some reason. What it's doing in the background, Tube Archivist, is running YTDLP, which is a command line way to like download YouTube videos. The challenge is YouTube's adding like new bot check detection algorithms, I guess you'd call them, and YTDLP has to figure that out. The two that are a bit more tricky is N-challenge and proof of origin tokens. Has anyone had to deal with this faff?
So I had this pop up earlier today when I was trying to download some YouTube videos with YTDLP. Episodes of the podcast with YTDLP whilst on LTE and roaming. So presumably there were a lot of other people on the phone network I was on trying to do the same thing, and I got a too many requests error. I assume that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Presumably they were also downloading copies of our podcast.
Let's hope so.
No doubt.
But it did give me the option to pull client cookies from my machine in and then pass those through. But then there was a big, here be dragons. You might get permanently banned from YouTube if you do this. And I got scared and decided I would just not download the video and I'd watch something else on my fly instead.
I haven't been banned yet, Gary.
Not yet. There's still time. But is that what you're talking about?
It's a little bit of that. So for context, when you watch YouTube on a browser, it sends a little, basically like JavaScript puzzle for your browser to solve. And then the browser will send back a token that says, yeah, I'm totally a real browser. Here's your answer. YTDLB doesn't have that inbuilt. And faking that's, I believe, pretty hard because you're basically trying to run JavaScript without a browser. So for Tube Archivist, they came up with an alternative solution, which is a little sidecar service called BGUtil, which is basically running Deno, which is a JavaScript interpreter. So what happens is YTDLB will do its thing, it gets a challenge, fires it off to the sidecar works out the challenge, sends it back to YTDLB, and then sends it up. So it sort of outsources the puzzle bit. So the sidecar's up and running, problem should be solved, but it still isn't because of stale packages.
YouTube shot first.
Wait, you're building this from source?
No, I'm not building this from source. I'm using what's it called? It's a BJWS app template, which is like a generic way to wrap images into Helm charts, effectively.
I am so impressed you did not give up.
I know. This is having a home lab on Kubernetes. This is the real crap.
I'd have definitely just paid the man £12 a month by this point, Shane.
No, it's principle, not money.
Okay, so yes, I've heard of this. There are other charts out there that use this as like a subcomponent and they build their charts around this thing. It's basically just a bunch of templating to make it really easy to get other charts stood up.
Exactly that. Yeah. It's a cheap way to get it running. However, it was actually Tube Archivist's Docker container that was the issue. It was running outdated versions of YTDLP. So I had to basically run an init container that would pull down the latest YTDLB and the plugins before spinning it up effectively. So if it dies, then it will effectively pull down the latest version to try again. So I've got my sidecar container running to handle JavaScript challenges, and now I've got my init container to pull the latest version of YTDLB. Still have issues, and this time it was actually with the software itself.
Dude.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. Tube Archivist uses Redis as a message queue for downloading tasks, basically. And if a pod crashes mid-download, which, happens, it'll leave a task stuck in a pending state in Redis and then never recover from it. So every future download just sits there being blocked. Anyone has to guess how I fixed that?
You submitted a pull request to fix the code, right?
No.
You fixed the application?
No. I didn't do that. That's a good idea. I should have done that. No, another init container. Just keep using that hammer. On startup, it goes through Redis and clears out any stuck pending tasks before the app boots. So it's a workaround for someone else's bug, but it works. And so it's perfect now. It's brilliant.
2 init containers and a sidecar. Perfect.
Yeah. It's dead easy, dead simple. Don't know why everyone doesn't do this.
I can now see why you're so reluctant to open source your stack. It's not just the sealed secrets you're scared of, is it? It's revealing what you really do in your spare time to the world.
No, it's so. This is one of many, Gary. I don't know. I blame you, Sean, for all of this. So yeah, that's home lab experience. Enjoy.
Well, having hit new levels of jank, I think that's about the time for us to wrap up. If you have any comments on janky home labs or anything else, please send those to show@hybridcloudshow.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, I've been Aaron.
I've been Gary.
I've been Sean.
And I've been Shane.
See you later.